Welcome back to the Skits and Giggles podcast. I am Pascal, chief instigator of this show and your host. I'm joined by my co-host and our resident engineer, the yin to my yang, the itchy to my scratchy. Bryson, how's it going today, buddy?
Yeah, good, Pascal. How are you doing?
All good, all good. Well, I got to do some trail exploring close to home over lunch, so that's always exciting.
Nice.
How did you get out for a ride today?
Naturally, I go for lunch rides. I went with some colleagues, and they dropped me a couple times, but they were so nice enough to wait for me at the top. I'm really fortunate, and lucky to have good colleagues.
Nice, but you're doing quite a few lunch rides recently. Is that a newer thing?
Yeah, I decided to pick up the road bike, use it as a training tool, and just get out to explore the landscape around the work area. Yeah, it's super exciting. There's a lot of different kinds of like road construction techniques with like drains going across the road that you got to watch out for, and different surface types, and it's like in the French Fribourg region. So yeah, it's just the hillside is completely different than the cities that I've seen so far, like the main cities I've seen of Switzerland. So it's really cool to experience, just a little bit out of the city.
Nice, very nice. Well, I guess just generally, I think lunch rides have been the main revelation of this pandemic. One of the more positive things coming out of this and working from home, of course, has been the save the commute every day and spend it on a good old lunch ride. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, speaking of exploring, we got a crew back together last weekend to go ride a new zone for us. So we'll be talking quite a bit about that today. There are some good takeaways from this trip that we want to discuss, and we also have a couple of open listener questions we will be picking up on. Before we get to our trip to Scuol, let's just get some housekeeping out of the way and briefly mention the social and where you guys can find more information about the Skits and Giggles podcast. We are currently most active on Instagram, where you can skid right into our DMs and follow along at Skits and Giggles. And you can find our website with all the relevant links and info under the URL skitsandgiggles.com. If you guys like what we're doing and want to follow along, just give us a follow on Spotify, hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts, or wherever else you listen to great podcasts. Also, sharing our episodes with your riding buddies or a quick 5-star rating on your favorite platform goes a long way in reaching more good people like you. Right, let's now get back to playing bikes. Bryson, why don't you talk a little bit about last weekend? Maybe lay out for the listener what we were up to.
Yeah, we were in this Scuol region, and that's a valley in the Graubünden canton of Switzerland. We were very fortunate enough to get like the best weather, or basically the start of the good weather in this country on the time that we started this trip. So it was a little bit of a suffering for me from the heat and all the climbing on my big bike, but I did definitely enjoy it. I've always wanted to visit Scuol. It's so truth is I want to visit every region, but Scuol has definitely been on the list since we went the first time to Reschenpass, because you drive in this direction, and then there's this signs like turn for Scuol, and then we go blow right past them and we go to Reschen. And I'm always like, that's such a funny word. Like what is that? And anyhow, we ended up there. Fantastic weather, fantastic trails, fantastic company. I had no expectations, but definitely happy I went there, and I would recommend it to some people depending on what kind of experience they're looking for. But
Well, yeah, as you say, I mean, I guess it really is the true kickoff of the Alpine season in Switzerland. I guess last weekend. I mean, because so far we've had we actually had quite a few nice spots of weather, like already in February and in April already. But I mean, May has been pretty horrendous. And this has really been the first weekend where, or the first couple of weeks where the snow could melt away, and we could really get into the Alpine zone. So anything above the tree line, and most of the trails are now cleared, and the gondolas are open, and that obviously makes it much easier to get around. But So yeah, but what did you think of the trails?
I am a fan of natural trails, and that's basically what Scuol can provide. Even the trail that was right underneath the gondola was quite natural and raw, rooty. Um, it was beautiful, actually. I wouldn't mind just going back there for one day and just doing laps on that one trail. I remember just coming down it, smile all the way across my face, saying, "I want more of this. This is like all I want to do." And we did a lot of other types of trails, and that was really cool to explore and see all the different panoramas and vistas from the different spots. We got up to quite a few snow lines, tree lines, and yeah, like you said, we're in the Alpine. It's been a while, but it's really nice to get back out there and like work for it,
Oh yeah, absolutely. But yeah, as you say, I mean, I guess what is the most impressive in that area? It is the area is called the Lower Engadin, so the Unterengadin, for the Swiss German speakers. And what is the most impressive and beautiful is that you have this valley floor where you also have a lot of these little castles that are sitting on top of the hill, somewhere in the valley, and then on both sides of the valley you have the mountains that reach up to, what is it, 2,500 meters, 3,000 meters, and stuff like that. So pretty decent elevation. And now this time of the year, so as we were recording this, it's the middle of June. It is all the greens are popping, the trees are out in full bloom, and the fields are all green and the flowers are out. So it's just very beautiful, and as you say, what is very 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 nice for the first time in the year is actually to get up on a gondola, get off the gondola at over 2,000 meters, and then not step into snow and put your skis on, but to actually sit on your bike and get a couple of cool laps in.
Throughout Switzerland, and we discussed this before, you can definitely hop on gondolas. There's several. Most that I've encountered you're allowed to take your bicycle on. So, for example, we have the Davos region, which we spoke about at length, Lenzerheide, and so. What would you say is like the contrast or maybe similarities? Some of the things that came to mind when you were out in Scuol this weekend.
Well, that's actually an interesting question. I think it's the what struck me also, not necessarily with riding, but also with talking with our guide that we had, and like the owners of the guiding company that we booked, is that it just appears that the region is not saying behind, but maybe in the terms of the trajectory of fully focusing on mountain bike tourism. It's still a little bit, a couple of years back maybe, from a place like Davos or Lenzerheide or Laux. So there's, there's still, not quite openly, but there's like in private, there's still kind of these discussions going on about the use of trail. Is this a hiking trail, or is this a bike trail? Is it a shared trail, or whatever it is? And most of the region, or in the canton of Graubünden, it's usually a shared trail policy. And there were a couple of instances where you just mentioned that trail under the gondola Motto Naluns, which is fantastic trail, but we were told afterwards that this is actually more of a hiking trail, and it's only to be used as a bike trail at certain times of the day, and that's not something we're really used to in the other destinations. Also, I've heard from the guide as well that in some areas in the valley, we've explored a couple of areas in the valley, that there is still some discussions going on of like, are bikers allowed in this area at all, or is it only for hikers, or only for whatever other trail users, for farmers and stuff like that, or are bikers allowed there? So kind of some of the issues that you know from the past, and that have eventually been resolved. So I understand that the region is only now getting organized with like a trail association that is looking after the trails, and of course establish trail networks and trail maintenance, and some kind of institutional trail management generally helps in avoiding conflict and making sure that the infrastructure is upkept and it's suitable for everyone.
I'd definitely say that on day 1 of 2, that big traverse we did was definitely giving me a little bit of reminiscence of some of the alpine riding and traverses we've done in Davos. What do you think? Now, obviously, okay, Davos is definitely a much more developed, same with Lenzerheide and these other areas that you mentioned. They're much more developed in terms of their trail networks, their capacity to maintain, and also their infrastructures. And of course, it is a topic across several regions across the world, is how do we get more people in? And there's a balance, because you don't always want to get too many people in. You don't want to destroy the way things naturally work in that region, whether they be for horseback riders only, or hikers, or like maybe it's not normally a mountain bike region just because of some rules or whatever. How do you think that what do you think it is that these destinations like Davos and Lenzerheide are doing, or how do you think that they have maybe an advantage that they can offer such an offer for mountain bikers, whereas Scuol has not yet been able to provide that?
Well, I believe the most obvious one, and I think you've made you figured that out yourself on day 1 with a 900-meter climb, is that the uplift infrastructure is not quite as advanced and in big numbers as in other areas. So there is, in this whole region, there's only 2 lifts that can take you up. So there's the gondola and the chairlift in Vdan. The other side of the valley is only served by a post auto, so the post bus, and that only has a rack for 5 bikes. So that's also kind of limited, and especially when you're traveling with a group, then that's a bit limiting. And if I contrast that, for example, with Davos, obviously I know very well, there is 6 mountains you can take your bikes up on with all high capacity. So they can actually bring a lot of people on the mountain and across user groups. So it's not only mountain bikers that they're transporting up the hill, but it's also, there's enough room for also hikers and other users or other people that want to get up on the mountain. So yeah, that's certainly a bit of a bottleneck. Of course, the flip side to that is if you have the necessary fitness and the willingness to do a little bit of pedaling and or quite a bit of pedaling, there is some fantastic scenery to be explored on the uphill. The second day when we were riding up, yes, it was the main road, but it was very beautiful through a golf course and then up to Schloss Tarasp, which is a beautifully restored little castle up on a hill. It also has very nice trails around it. That is very, very nice. And I think in terms of the user group, if you have an e-bike with a decent battery, and then you can do quite a bit of trail damage in Scuol, I believe.
Yeah, you're right, actually. And one of the things that I noticed, but it didn't really struck me so much, is that there wasn't so many other mountain bikers around. It was sort of like when I was in. It wasn't like there were no mountain bikers there, because we definitely saw a few groups pass by at a distance, or maybe even just right across us. But it was definitely a different experience For example, when we were in Davos, there's lineups of people jumping on lifts, standing alongside trails randomly as you descend, in all of the Gasthofs and restaurants at the middle station and at the bottom and things like that. Whereas here, it almost felt like we were the only group touring this mountain. And given it is still quite an early season, so there's still going to be a lot of people who are waiting for the trails to dry up even more. We did walk across a few snow patches, just very small ones, but still, there's those user groups who definitely will wait until it's completely dry in order to go out there. And but you make a good point about the e-bikes. So having that motor is really going to give you that edge when it comes to getting that extra elevation, because the gondolas really don't go all the way to the top, whereas some places they do.
Well, especially if you think about, you've talked about it in other conversations, but I mean, if you think about modern e-bikes, so the ones with like smaller battery but like decent capability. So I'm thinking of the most recent offering of Specialized, for example, or the new Orbeas. That starts to be very interesting, especially for trips like that, where you don't necessarily want like the full turbo boost all the way up, but just a little bit of support could be a great equalizer in a bigger group, right? So, for example, in our group, that could have made quite a bit of a difference, right? So, I mean, I understand you were struggling quite a bit.
It was part of what made my weekend special. Yeah, definitely.
Struggle.
The struggle. Well, you know something's worth it if you struggle, I guess.
Oh yeah, for sure. That was more of a joke. But you also brought a pretty big gun to a knife fight with your free ride bike. That's not necessarily of a weight class that is destined for multi-thousand meter climbing days.
That's true. But I noticed you put a coil on your bike. So I thought, okay, I'll bring my bike with a coil. Yeti's got a coil on his bike. Well,
yeah.
It was sort of like, okay, I think it's about time I start riding it. It's just why not? It's a little bit of training, and yeah, I'm quite a bit slower. It takes a lot more energy, but
very much faster on the downhill. It's simple physics.
Yeah, totally. It was super comfortable. Actually, I fell in love again with that bike after making some of the modifications. No, I changed the tire. I changed the pressures in the tires. Added some sealant, so I had no problems there. But the setup of the bike was really good for the down. So I'm really happy that I got to take advantage of that, and I would love to take it more often. But I have to get over that fear of like we're pedaling so much that I'm like thinking, oh my gosh, it's too much pedaling. Maybe my heavy bike is the wrong gun, But yeah, I think I'm just gonna try pushing harder and taking it out more and seeing how far I can take myself and push the limits of your guys' patience when you get to the hill. And you've paced yourself higher, and then you're at the top just cooling down, waiting for me to steam up.
Yeah, we were waiting for our down jackets, because it's of course 2,500 meters. It starts getting a bit chilly with the wind and everything, and by the time you arrive, we need a warm up again. But all the joking aside, I did note that you rotated your brake levers up quite a bit, so I thought I'll take partial credit for that. Maybe just in summary, what was your maybe a personal highlight for you from the trip?
The personal highlight for me would definitely be the bike bag that I picked up. So it's one of these bags that you use for air travel or whatever. So you take the wheels off the bike, you take the handlebar off, you kind of all store it together and wrap it all up, and then like put the wheels in separate pockets beside the bike, and then you zip it all up in this giant suitcase filled with the bike. And it's got wheels on one end, so it was definitely manageable to roll around. And then as a side highlight, I decided to take the train. So I have the yearly subscription to the train, and it was worthwhile to do this experiment because I've never had one of these travel bags, and I've always wanted to use it. I've always wanted to have one, and since I've had it, I've always wanted to use it on a trip. But since we've had a pandemic going around, travel has been limited, and so I think, I'm really happy I took the opportunity to pack the bike in the bag, learn how to use it, how mobile it is, how resistant it is to tipping, and how easy it is to roll on and off trains. So yeah, all in all, it was a success. I'm really happy with the product, and I'm really happy with using that form of travel. I think it's an economical way, as well as I said before, it's quite convenient in terms of travel in Switzerland to use the train. So,
Oh, for sure, for sure.
how about you, Pascal? What's a highlight?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's always good to have a good crew together. I mean, the good vibes only. We're a bit unluckier with the accommodation selection compared to our last trip, but we made
Sorry for the snoring.
We made it work. There was only one toilet for 4 adults. But we made it work. In terms of the highlights, I guess it is that first trip to the Alpine. There's still a couple of patches of snow, but you make your way around it. The views are just stunning, and the riding has been great. And I think in terms of the riding zones, I actually enjoyed the second day on the other side of the valley. I enjoyed that quite a bit. That was good fun. A bit of a pedal, but some good fun, and some interesting trails, kind of loamy, rooty, subalpine forest kind of stuff, and that's always a good time.
Yeah, it was a really interesting region on the other side. A really different character, actually, is what I felt. Because I took a little break and I was just there chilling out, relaxing, as you guys went for one extra loop, and I just kind of felt like, again, I was in a different country. I'll say this again and again. In Switzerland, you go to different areas and you just feel like you're in a different country. You don't feel like you're in the same Switzerland that you live in, or that you visited multiple times. It's it's a really cool feeling that you get. What I found also really cool about, not really that other side, but right in between the two sides, there's that large river flowing through the valley. And we happened upon a really cool restaurant that was right up alongside the river. And it's really nice to hear the rushing water as you eat your tofu bowl and have your non-alcoholic Weissbier.
Yeah. Oh, that was a very good spot. Very good spot. Totally. Well, I guess after the last weekend, we can't not talk about pre-cramping. So this is not necessarily a listener question per se, but a request for answers from the United Return Home in the Car crew, which included myself, as well as Yeti and Louisa. So, Bryson, can you maybe elaborate a little bit on the different stages of your cramping?
Yeah, so I'm pretty well known for cramping, and I'm pretty well known for not passing out, but laying down when I get to the top of a big climb. I just feel like it, the whole body relaxation of just getting horizontal is just reviving, just amazing. Anyways, so the pre-cramp, I think where it stems from is I was having a really hard time telling you guys that I was about to cramp, and for me, it's almost like a hair trigger. So I'll just know I'm about to cramp, right as I'm cramping. And then I say to myself, okay, I need to stop now because one more pedal stroke or one more meter or whatever it is, it's going to spring. And then I'm pretty much going to have to call it or like take like a decent rest so that I can let it uncramp, relax, get the blood flowing, and then allow it to like start working again, right? So the way I tried to explain myself was I'm pre-cramping, so I know I'm going to cramp, and therefore it kind of sends the signal to you guys to let you know that, okay, so we think he's cramping, but he calls it pre-cramping. In any case, I did end up cramping, but it wasn't so bad because I was able to take that small break. And then, of course, I had the cramp, which wasn't so bad. I was able to recover from it fairly quickly and, kind of without commotion. But, of course, there was also the post-cramping. So we can talk about that in another episode, maybe.
Oh, well, I have photographic evidence of the post-cramp. Once we made it up to that little lake where we were going to, so you had a little lie down. Although the funny thing I couldn't document because the funny thing is you were so in your post-cramp state, you were so focused on finding a nice spot to lie down. You just put your bike away and then walked over to a nice spot in the shade and just threw yourself on the floor to do your whatever relaxing yoga pose that you didn't quite realize that you lie down right next to an enormous anthill. And I was like, oh, well, why is it tickling on my back so much? And I was like, well, because you're lying right next to an anthill.
It was huge.
It was huge. So
it's like the size of my bike.
Exactly. So you got up and then of course you found the needed rest for the post cramp. But yeah, I mean cramping always is a little bit of a sign of some of a muscle doing something that he's not quite used to. I mean, have you done any preparation for this big riding weekend? I mean, we have to be fair. I mean, the brief was pretty clear. I mean, it was like Saturday is going to be a bit of a pedal and some more, quite a bit of downhill, and then Sunday is going to be a bit more uplifts and a lot of downhill. So what was your preparation looking like?
Well, as I alluded to before, as I mentioned before, I've been riding my road bike primarily as a training tool, and I've been doing a little bit of like hill intervals or just sprinting up sections of the hill, which I feel like, hey, I'm doing this in preparation for my big mountain adventures. Elevation is a different thing, so that whole slightly less oxygen, so that also plays a role. However, it really comes down to like this muscle just not being able to cope. So the training rides at lunch basically have been doing it. And actually, I have to admit, I'm very sorry, but our rides are also a form of training ride for me because I know we're going to be riding more throughout the season and we'll definitely be going on longer days and even consecutive day trips. So if I'm pushing hard now, it just means that further on down the road in the season, I'm just going to be a little more fit and prepared to continue and not have to bail out early of our following trips.
No more pre-cramping or post-cramping.
Well, I'll definitely have some. I'm not guaranteeing anything. But I'm also, drinking a lot of water, trying to do that whole thing, trying to do the minerals intake and I actually became a lot better at the energy management, so making sure I'm snacking enough, the right things.
Always be snacking.
Yeah.
Secret.
Every ride I'm snacking.
Very nice. Well, I guess with that, we, as we mentioned earlier, we also have some open listener question. And this one is actually pretty perfect for this riding trip. So Mr. T, my dear friend JT, he wants to know, and I think you, Bryson, should have something really interesting to say about this. He says, in quotes, "Why does no single pro rider use the techniques advocated by skills coaches?" And I think it's a great question. And I think we can maybe illustrate later a little bit with the switchbacks that we encountered over the weekend. So what do you got on this, Bryson?
I haven't ridden with a lot of pros, but I will say the ones that are fast have their basically their own techniques, their own skill sets, and whether they developed them before they learned these um, recognized skills that they teach in courses, or whether they've taken these skills at the basic level and then evolve them to match their speed and technique and their style. I'm not sure. Maybe it's a constant evolution or a mixture of the both or whatever it is. But what I can say is that it's it's a whole different ball game, especially for fast guys. Taking the base technique, it's really just a fundamental. It's almost as if it's just like a thesis. It's just a basic part of what they're doing, because when you have higher speeds, you have higher forces going through the bike, and you are moving the bike more dynamically to cope with the terrain coming at you faster. So you're gonna, yeah, maybe it's really interesting to watch like Johan Borelli and Remy Metallier doing their slab stuff, or they're doing some videos where they break down the kind of moves they do, but in reality they're moving like super fast, and then they're hitting the transitions super hard and super quick, and then making really fast moves. And I can't see it. I mean, I don't see any of that happening. Do you?
I'd probably be lying if I said I do. I kind of have a feeling what's going on, but again, as you say, right, the nuances are too small and too like minute details to actually. You would have to have like a super high frame per second camera to actually see what's going on, and like break it down in like super slow mo and stuff like that. So. But yeah, no, I mean, why I thought it was interesting is, of course, what we haven't talked about yet when it comes to our trip to Scuol is that it is also a great destination to work on your Euro endos, on your switchback technique, on your I don't even know. I don't even know what you want to call it. But I mean, it's we talked about it with Nick Vicky when we talked about designing an EWS race course, and some of the North American teams complaining about this European race tracks and yes, having these switchbacks and awkward corners and stuff like that. So I think Scuol is a pretty decent location to be practicing those. And to come back to the question from JT is my personal view is that there's just there is no one single way that works for everyone. I mean, it's as you say, it's kind of it's a consensus. It's a kind of a starting point. But if I look at the group that we had this weekend, so we had, including the guide, we were 5 people. So we have, on the one end of the spectrum, we have Yeti, who's almost 2 meters tall. He rides a double XL Mega Tower 29er with a very long wheelbase. On the other end of the spectrum, we have Louisa, who's, no offense, probably around 170. She rides a medium-sized 29er, which in and of itself is almost impossible to get a thing like that around the corner for her, but she made it work, and she, out of the group of us, I would say she got around those switchbacks most efficiently, and I think we called her I know we called her the queen of the switchbacks. But then there was also you with with your 27.5 free ride bike. There was the guide with also a 27.5 kind of trail bike. Myself with my big wheeled enduro bike, also in a size large, so not quite the shortest of all bikes. And somehow we all kind of got around those corners in more efficient or less efficient ways. And so that's I think that's my take on it. But yeah, I mean, there's again, it also depends on what you need, right? So if you're a racer, then of course you want the most efficient way to get around the corner, and not necessarily is that the most technically clean way of like, approaching your turn very wide, and here's your braking point, and this is where you put your front wheel, and then you endo a little bit and get your back wheel around, and then you hop with the front wheel, and then you start pedaling again. And, that all looks cool in an Instagram video or an Instagram reel. But at the end of the day, if you're in a race, probably the most efficient way is to put your foot out, pull your rear brake, just slide the back wheel around, get back on the pedal, and start pedaling again.
Fair enough. And that's sort of where I saw my style evolving as we were navigating all these switchbacks through the weekend. At first, I started out doing it like classic, where I like basically go wide, get slow down, come in tight, and then try to balance through the turn. Like these are very tight. And so I was going very slowly around these turns, balancing, feathering the back brake only, basically. And then kind of coming around, getting 1/4 pedal stroke or so in to like get me coasting enough to like pump or get to the next switchback, because sometimes they were like quite close in succession. And then I started following you, I started following Louisa, I started following Yeti and the guide at some points, and everyone has a different style. And some of them stuck to their style, and some of them were also improving on their style or evolving it and such. And like one thing I picked up from Yeti is like, well, his bike is too long, so on a lot of them he would just basically stop and pick his front wheel up, pivot his whole bike and body around this turn with his foot down, and then continue on. And I thought, okay, well, on some of them this is necessary as well. Like the ones that aren't such a steep switchback, it's no risk to basically like almost come to a stop, foot plant, and just use your momentum to swing your bike over, because the risk is very low. Maybe other ones where they were with a steeper exit, and therefore I didn't want to like try to do any of that, because maybe if you lose footing or put your foot in the wrong place or whatever, you're not really setting yourself up for such a safe exit. And then there's Louisa. She basically was like a mixture of like creeping around, a little bit of like rear wheel sliding just a bit, just to kind of do like a smaller pivot. But for most of it, she was basically practicing. And that's why she's the queen. She just was trying to clean everything. And so I got a little bit of motivation from that. So I continued on with my technique. And then I got a little bit of motivation from Yeti, who also did a little bit of foot plant and then like pull the e-brake, rear wheel type of just like whip himself around the corner. And then, well, actually, I didn't see you. You're too fast.
No, definitely not. I mean, some of those switchbacks were just so tight. I mean, crazy. And so yeah, certainly on the second day, which was again one of those typical very high alpine. So it's like starting at 2,500 meters, basically a cow track down the hillside, and so there was like a switchback every 20 meters. Very tight, very exposed, and then I think you and Yeti, you decided that you had enough of the switchbacks at some stage, and then just took the free ride line down the ridge, and be done with it, rather than struggling around those awkward turns all the time.
Yeah, but in the end, we only skipped 3, so it wasn't that. It was worth it for sure, because it was like, hey, yeah, because there was a line there. It's not like we just kind of went willy nilly, but it was just to mix it up. I think more so for me, anyways. Just wanted to say, oh wow, okay, like Yeti found another line. Let's try that one out. Okay, it brought me a little bit further down, so let's continue going on. But actually, I did really enjoy the switchbacks. I'm not anti-switchback. But to contrast with that, I'm not one of these like pro front wheel endo pivot type of guys. Like I can do it like a small hop at like very sort of
old school trials guys, like standing in one spot, balancing your bike, hopping around, and lift the front wheel, lift the back wheel, and like no.
Basically, for me, it's last ditch effort. And if I pull it off, I'm lucky.
Exactly. But then everyone knows about it, because you're like, yeah, guys, did you see that? That's just how it's done.
I put it It's on the IG. Check it out. I
Yeah,
send you a link.
Put it on the gram. All right. Well, I guess, I think that answers the question. I think it's just, again, skills or techniques advocated by coaches are typically like a baseline. And, that gets people around a certain obstacle relatively safely. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's the fastest or the most efficient way, or it suits every rider type, rider style, or rider size, for that matter. I think that's the main point that we wanted to make.
So, seeing as we don't have a guest today,
again,
we really got to get on this. Anyways, we thought it would be really interesting if we did these closeout questions with Pascal, because he's yet to do one. I did mine on the last non-guest episode. So it's your turn, Pascal. Let the listeners know a little bit about the first bike that got you stoked on riding.
The first bike that got me stoked on riding, that was actually pre-mountain bikes, and I'm certainly here in Switzerland, and I'm kind of dating myself. That was a blood red and gold Bonanza BMX that I got when I was, I think, about 3 or 4 years old. And we, both my brother and I, we rode the proverbial shit out of this bike. We had it for such a long time. We rode it everywhere. We raced it around the block where we used to live when we were little kids. Did little races around the block with the neighbor kids, and then when we moved away, we moved closer to the forest, and then we were allowed to play in the forest, because in the 80s no one really cared about where your kids are hanging out during the day, so you're just outside and playing. And we took the bike out, built little jumps, built little racetracks and stuff like that. So until we pulled so many skids that we started destroying tubes, and then my parents started complaining about always destroying rear tires and tubes, and we always needed to go to the bike shop because my parents couldn't or didn't want to change the tires themselves. So at some stage they were like, well, that's got to stop. And then we got kind of bikes that were not quite so suitable to be ridden off-road or pulling skids. But so maybe to first mountain bike, really, that it is that GT LTS from, 1996? So the first one, LTS2 with the coil shock. And over time I just collected parts. I could work during the summer to have the money to be upgrading the bits and pieces that you needed at the time. So that of course included a bash guard for your chain rings, that included the chain tensioning device, the CBD at the time. You had to have the moto bars with the cross beam reinforcement over the top. And I think my most prized possession at the time was a pair of neon orange Johnny T Maguras. Because obviously Johnny T, John Tomac, was a personal hero of mine when it came to riding bikes. He's a big star in the early 90s, both in mountain biking as well as on the road. So that was one of my most prized possessions. And I guess that also got me into riding. Got my love for riding fast. I think both uphill and downhill. That was the bike that got me stoked about that.
So for you, the skids and the giggles go deep. Sounds like goes way back. You're making skids and you're kind of laughing at your parents for having to change the tires.
Exactly. That's me in a nutshell.
Right on. All right. So imagine you're Harry Skidini, bike magician extraordinaire. So you are going to make biking more awesome for everybody with the stroke of your magic dropper post. What kind of things are you going to do?
Well, of course, we've had a couple of great inputs on these closeout questions already, so it's kind of hard to come up with an original one. But I guess my department, between the two of us, is probably more the the fitness and the kind of the training aspects of cycling. And I think with my Magic Dropper post, I would guide a gift a lot more fitness on everyone, because I believe riding a bike is much more fun if you can ride it fast, and that's uphill as well as downhill. And you'll be surprised how much fitness it needs to ride a bike downhill fast. So I think it's going to make it better for anyone.
I will definitely attest.
You sign up for that.
I will.
I take Morse. I'll
take 2 samples, but I will definitely attest. I definitely will feel a lot of fitness if I understand how to go downhill fast. So, yeah, currently don't know how to go downhill fast, but I almost feel like I've inspired your answer there, because I'm not so fast.
Well, I mean, it's just because you bring heavy bikes to all these expeditions.
You know what they say about heavy bikes?
Big guns.
Right. So, number 3. And normally we have our co-host read this one, but we have a very special guy reading this question today. It's co-host.
Hi. In your personal opinion, in your heart of hearts, what makes a great skid, Pascal?
Well, again, we've also had a couple of great answers on this one. I personally think there is the right skid for the occasion. I like a good moto skid on a gravel road where you just go like super fast around a long flat turn, put your foot out, pull the rear brake, and like big roost, big skid, long kind of drifting skid. So that is a really, really nice one. That always gets me excited. I think one of the coolest things you can do, and I know it's very, very frowned upon, is a very, very well executed Scandi flick or free ride flick or whatever you want to call it. It's just one of the coolest things. You can tell me whatever you want. And then what is also a cool one, I think I agree with Greg Jolliffe there, is like you're approaching a big turn at Mac Chicken, you pull in the last second, you pull your brakes, both wheels skidding, just almost crashing, and then in the last second you let go and bring it around and flop, get around the turn and just save it, and that's just such a cool feeling. I think that's those would be my top 3 skids. I think I've outdone myself with the skids here. What do you think?
Make skids legal again.
Totally. We should make T-shirts. Sending it for the trail crew. Skids and Giggles.
skidsandgiggles.com/store.
Exactly. Well, with that, I guess we close out the episode today. Thanks again, guys, for all the follow-up questions and the inputs. Please keep them coming. They really help to make our podcast as relevant to our listeners as possible. Also, as mentioned at the top of the show, please keep sharing our episodes with your friends and riding buddies wherever you listen. It really helps us expand our reach and allows us to talk to many more cool and interesting people like you. If you have a cool photo with one of our stickers maybe, and you want more people to see it, just tag us on Instagram and we can share it with our ever-growing list of followers. That's it for today, guys. Bryson, thank you very much. Talk to you next time.
Ciao, Pascal.
Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao.